Hello, and welcome to another episode of The End of the Search. This one I call it Becoming Free from Artificial Intelligence. First of all, if you're new to these videos, know that we're always pointing to beingness, which is what we are, also known as non-duality, and it's something that we cannot talk about nor experience as human experience or as a human being. Is non-conceptual. However, why am I talking about this topic of artificial intelligence? Because we're overlooking a very tiny detail which is going to be revealed in a moment. First of all, let's define artificial intelligence. The word artificial is because the intelligence that we're talking about here is not the wisdom that we are. It's programming, is conditioning. So for example, you have a huge database of information and you may have access to all that information, but that information is not intelligent. It's just information that has already been gathered and is put in there. So you are limited by all that information, when in reality, beyond that information, there's a vastness that cannot even be talked about. So it's called artificial intelligence because we have access to that seeming intelligence that seems to be more than the one or we think to have, but it's still artificial because it's limited by whatever is being fed into it. Well, we are that artificial intelligence when we believe to be a human being. Why? Because the moment this belief of being a human being, this limited thing or limited, whatever you want to call it, it's also limited by its conditioning. And that conditioning is what we refer to or we label intelligence. If you have someone who studied a lot of books and read many books and everything, you call that person intelligent. But that intelligence is artificial, first because it believes that there is a person, but on top of that is limited by all the books this person may have read. In other words, is limited by its conditioning. Well, we believing that we're this individual because this is what our thoughts tells us, and because of the conditioning we receive from childhood, we're limited by that seeming intelligence, and the only way to become free from the consequence of that limitation, which always leads to suffering and to pain and limitation, what we do in the human experience is that we think that we need to go to more intelligence. In other words, we go to whatever we've learned from experts or from databases or something like that. You see, we do is we take the seeming artificial intelligence that we are, and now we're going to another level of seeming artificial intelligence to be able to feel better, to let go, to solve our problems, whatever the case may be, overlooking that the only problem is the belief that I'm a separate entity. That's the only problem, because who we are is really what words cannot explain. So the way to become free from artificial intelligence is so obvious and is so overlooked. And it's so overlooked because it's not going to be through the mind, it's not going to be through the intellect, it's not going to be through anything that we've learned or any computers can tell us. The way to become free is to not believing anything that we think. In other words, is by not believing any conditioning. That is how we not become free necessarily, but we recognize, or the freedom that we are becomes obvious, because we are already free. Only the conceptual mind is the one that is not allowing you to realize that, because even that you who try to realize that is part of the seeming artificial intelligence within the human experience. So again, there's two levels. First is the belief that I'm this individual with what I think I know. That is artificial intelligence. And then when my limitation or my limited artificial intelligence cannot do, Then I try to go to other artificial intelligence, which would be all the information that seems to be available. But all of that is gathered information, therefore is limited, and we're pointing to the fact that we simply are. And that R-ness, so to speak, is not limited by anything that anyone or ourselves could have learned or been taught. Is the vastness of all there is. This is what we're pointing to. So becoming free of that is not actually that you're going to become free. You are already free. You're just looking at the false, and the false is anything that you think that is conceptually understood, it is conceptually seen, the world of perception, all of it is false, but you simply are. And then the way we make this practical is that we're not trying to become something, we're just recognizing what we are by not believing anything we think. So when I ask you, who are you? You have to go to the mind, you have to go to a thought, and when you go to a thought, that is part of the artificial intelligence. But if I ask who are you and you don't believe any thought, that cannot be answered conceptually, but it's pointing to the fact that you are. Right now, if you don't believe any thoughts, what is left? What remains? If you answer me, you went back to the artificial intelligence at the level of the human experience. And if you want to go to another level of artificial intelligence, you go into the computer and find out from all the huge information database gathered, which is all limited anyway, even though it may not appear to be so because it's more information, to try to find the answer to that question, and you still are going to be overlooking the fact that you simply are, and that R-ness, put it this way, is non-conceptual, cannot be limited by the or conceptualized by the mind. It simply is life itself, and that is what you are. This is where this is pointing to. You see? So you become free from artificial intelligence, meaning from your own thinking, by just not believing in it. Doesn't mean that thoughts will not gonna be there. We're not arguing against thoughts. That's fine. Thoughts will be there. But if you don't believe them, you're resting in the wisdom that you are, which is not personal. And that is where this is pointing to. Consequently, you are literally free from the artificial intelligence. You are free from the matrix. Even when in the world of appearances, you can use the seeming artificial intelligence for functional things, but that has nothing to do with the essence of what you are. Because even all the stuff that you think that you're thinking, all the things that you think that you're doing, are done through you. You're an instrument. You're an instrument that knows absolutely nothing, and on top of not knowing absolutely nothing, is not even doing anything. It's like a computer who has all this software, and in the software, one of them says, I am a computer, I am smart. The truth of the matter is the computer is not smart, and is simply it's the instrument. And all the information in the computer did not come from the computer, it came from an outside programmer. Well, life is the outside programmer, so to speak. And whatever the computer do or say does not come from its own intelligence. So we as instrument, everything that we say, that think we know, it just comes from information that we've been fed. It doesn't come from the vastness of what we are, which is beyond any kind of artificial intelligence. And on top of that, whatever we think we do, or it doesn't matter, or we say, is also being said through us. So we are not even the ones who are thinking, we are being thought. We're not the ones who are doing. Doing happens through us. This is the paradox we're going to have to learn to live with. So when the mind with this artificial intelligence come up with thoughts that, oh, that means that if I'm never intended to know who I am, doesn't matter what I do, there's nothing I can do about it, and I'll be whatever wants me to do. In one way, you could say yes, And on the other way, I always say, but if that information or that, whatever you want to call it, that seems to be dreaming this, because this hasn't even happened, but let's not even go there. If that is using the instrument you and the instrument me so we can remember who we are, it could be said that that is using us to remember itself as that which is beyond words, and to me that is motive of celebration. Otherwise, you would be doing something else. Why would you be listening to information like this one? Why would you be drawn to read books that is pointing to truth if that seeming intelligence would not be leading you to that? You see? So any question that has to do with hypotheticals or possibilities or whatever the case may be, it's just a thought. Right now, all that there is what is, and you are. And that is not artificial and it's not intelligence. It is wisdom and it is true. And you are true. You are that which words cannot describe. These videos are pointing to that. And by not believing anything you think, you are right now free from the quote-unquote artificial intelligence that claims to be you, and from the quote-unquote artificial intelligence that seems to be something beyond, like, for example, computers and database and all that stuff. It doesn't matter. Once again, all this stuff can be used for practical reasons. If I want to find out information about something that pertains to the world of appearances, I can go to this seeming artificial intelligence. It saved myself a lot of hours reading a lot of books and everything. But while that is being done, there's a recognition that none of that has anything to do with who I am. It's just part of the functioning of the human experience while it appears that I'm here, but I'm not believing any of it. And that's how we live in a world with a mind that is not of the world, you see? And living from that perspective doesn't mean that you will not know how to function. You will function fine, because again, it's not you who's functioning, life is functioning through you. However, having said that, it's not like you will not know how to function. It's that whatever you do, you will do it from a different framework, meaning that by not believing the content of the mind, you will experience the peace that passes all understanding. In other words, you are happy. This is the information that came through this instrument. I hope it served. And as always, may peace permeate the mind so that love can be extended.